Nick, and welcome to the Somewhat Daily News Backup for Monday, the 8th of February. It's somewhat daily because we come at you somewhat daily every Monday and Wednesday live on Twitch with all the gaming news that is fit to talk about. Today, I am joined by Peter, the Woodsman Burns.
Yeah!
And by making the show today, we've already outdone Blizzard's 2021 content plans. We are more prolific than Blizzard, Peter.
I feel like that's been true of every year of our careers, particularly back in the OG Pocket days when we worked till we ached at the bone.
That's true. And I think, like Blizzard, our output has been slowly declining in quality with every year since. As usual, the Somewhat Daily Backup is brought to you by Hero Pocketeer Tim. Get your exclamation mark Tims out in the chat. Tim from the Learn Programming Academy. Oh boy, if you want to learn programming from a man named Tim, then do I have the Tim for you. His programming classes are easy to watch for all skill levels. You can watch them offline on your phone, and they're almost all $20 or less. I'm sure that also means there are some super expensive classes out there. That's the really good, juicy programming details that you really want to know. But for everything else, it's like $20 or less. You can learn programming for that. Head to lpa.dev/backpocket to download the custom Backpocket PDF to get some programming lessons into you. And speaking of getting things into us, Peter, should we get some news into us?
I think we should. Let's gobble it up.
Is that how we treat the news?
Yeah. That's basically how we treat the news. Some journo does wonderful research, and we pull it apart and spit it back out.
It's so true. We're vultures. We just feast on the work of others.
I have an opinion about the work that you did.
Totally. I don't even have an opinion about the story, the actual story. I have an opinion about the reporting of the story. But I can tell you that my opinion about the reporting of the first story is stellar. Wesley Yinpool, you did a fantastic job at Eurogamer when you reported that the Shadow of Mordor Nemesis system has officially had its patent granted. Warner Brothers had filed for the U.S. Patent and Trademark to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office for a patent on their Nemesis system from Shadow of Mordor, and on the 3rd of February, it was confirmed that that patent will go into effect on the 23rd of February this year, with an option to maintain until 2035. The patent is dubbed Nemesis Characters, Nemesis Forts, Social Vendettas, and Followers in Computer Games, and I still find it amazing that we call them computer games. And it is now assigned to Warner Brothers Entertainment. Its current status is listed as pending, but it is expected to be updated to reflect its recent approval. Peter, how do you feel about an iconic system like this being patented and Warner Brothers owning it?
Yeah, it's on a base level, it sucks. We'll go deeper on why it sucks in the way it sucks. But it feels totally against the whole ethos of coding and game development that's existed since the dawn of it. Obviously, IP law is important in software development, broader than games as well. Mm-hmm. And when I say important, it is an important part of the business of it. It's not important to the joy of using software. It's literally just a development, a business tool, is to protect the IP of the code that you've written. But as far as game is concerned, development has always been about like open source, people learning and taking things from each other. Like games are meant to be fun and to take, and people always borrow things from other games. I mean, Shadow of Mordor, it is Assassin's Creed with one extra thing, and this one extra thing is what they've patented here.
I mean, that's the interesting thing, that their argument is that, funnily enough, their argument is basically we are a generic video game that is like every other video game except for this one thing. That's why this one thing is important, because it's the only thing we have. Like, without it, you would not know that this video game was our video game. So it's kind of like we built the entire thing around this and it's all we have. But I agree. I just think I understand businesses just want a business, but this feels like it's stifling creativity as opposed to someone going, oh, I'm going to steal this. Like, I don't think that Shadow of Mordor and it's or any Warner Brothers game that wants to use the Nemesis system loses money because someone else is doing something similar with this. And that's how me as a lawyer consider something like a patent, that you go, well, I've designed this thing, and if someone else sells this thing, then I lose money on this. But this is just part of a creative tapestry in a video game, and it doesn't mean that you aren't going to play this just because it might be in something else. So it seems relatively petty. However, it's also one of those situations where a patent is not the same as a copyright. So it's not necessarily illegal for you to do this, and it's very specific in what you can and can't do. So there are shades where you can get very close to a Nemesis system but not have exactly the same thing. The problem is that the developers who are likely to be able to do something like that, where they go, oh, we want to put a Nemesis-like system in our games, like, say, Assassin's Creed, where they have the mercenaries that are hunting you and it's kind of doing the same thing. They've got enough lawyers, enough legal advice, enough money to go, well, we know the ins and outs of how this is, and if we had to go to court with this, we think that we would be fine. But if you and I suddenly became developers, thanks to Tim at the Learn Programming Academy, and we decided to make a video game, we would probably not approach doing something like this, because the fear of being sued out of existence by Warner Brothers would stop us from attempting this, even though we might be legally within our rights.
Yeah, and this isn't a They may, but it's not a publicly available bit of code. It's not a publicly available tool to plug into something. When, obviously, Epic have a patent on the Unreal Engine, but the Unreal Engine as well, they make money from. They treat it as it is an engine available to buy into, and they make money from you making money from their engine. And this patent could end up working in a similar way, where there's a fee related to implementing the code that they wrote for this Nemesis system, or something similar to build a similar system. And in some ways that might make it more accessible, because I'm not a coder, but I don't know how hard it was to code this to work as well as it does in the Shadow of Mordor and War games. And maybe the reason we haven't seen anyone else using a system that's similar is because obviously it only works in a semi-open game like a Shadow of Mordor, where, I mean, obviously you could scale it up, but I feel like scaling it down, you can only scale that down so far. It doesn't necessarily work it could work in a dating sim.
So when you go on a date and it goes bad and you have a fight and then that person limps away, but they're like, I'll be back.
Yeah, and then you're on a date 6 months later, and that person that you had a bad date with rocks up at the bar. It's basically it would work great in a Scott Pilgrim game. I love that as an idea. I think that's fantastic. Okay, so this could be applied to any genre, any game.
Totally.
and it hasn't been since Shadow of was it Mordor was the second one, right?
Mordor was the first one. Shadow of War was the second one, because it should have been Shadow of Wardor.
Yes, perfect. There you go. We haven't really seen anything like it implemented. And, of course, part of that was because Warner Brothers were trying to patent it, and I'm sure that scared a few people away from it. But also, I imagine it's just a really complex system. And if Warner Brothers make it a system that is available for other devs to buy into in a fair and accessible way, we could see it appear more, which could be a good thing. But I doubt that's the play for them.
Well, I figure it's going to show up potentially in some more Warner Brothers games. We might see it in a Batman game or something. But yeah, I just feel like it goes against the spirit of what the patent office represents. I'm not saying the patent office represents freedom of creativity, but I feel like this is needlessly punitive. But we'll see how it all turns out. Something that we're not going to see anytime soon is the Prince of Persia: Sands of Time remake, which has been delayed indefinitely. Taylor Lies at The Verge reports that Ubisoft Pune, the Indian-based studio tasked with remaking one of the most popular entries in the series, said the reason for delaying the game again was to ensure it receives extra development time that will allow the team to, quote, deliver a remake that feels fresh while remaining faithful to the original. I mean, this is 2021, which means it is the year of video games being delayed. I feel like not a single game has come out on the day that it was supposed to come out. But was this delay a necessary one, in your opinion?
I mean, my opinion doesn't matter.
It's the only opinion that matters, Peter.
Is the game finished? Obviously, they when they revealed this, there was a lot of negativity around it, and I look at it, I'm like, oh, cool. It's like this looks like a good reskin of an old game that is enough of a visual upgrade for me to check it out, because I never played the original Prince of Persia. And then the people that play the original Prince of Persia are mad about the little details that have changed. And I feel like that a lot of the press was not pressed. A lot of the community feedback was reasonably negative. So I feel like that's probably what they're reacting to is, okay, if we're making this game at its heart, we're making it for core fans of the series who have played these titles before. And if we're not making them happy, then what's the point? So let's make sure that we hit the marks and fix up the little areas where they saw the game change in a way that they didn't like.
Yeah, I think that's probably the main thing. I mean, when it came out, I think that the thing that people were unhappy with, I feel like it got slammed very hard, harder than I would have thought. But the main thing seemed to be that it seemed to bridge the gap between a remaster and a remake. It didn't look like what a 2020 video game should, quote, look like. It looked more like a sort of upscaled PS3 game or something. And so it felt more like they had sort of remastered something, even though it appears tons has changed. But it just didn't live up to that. And then I think you look as well at the sort of games that have come out, particularly in the last 12 months even, that have been remakes. And I'm talking about Resident Evil 2, Demon's Souls, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, Final Fantasy 7
remake, yeah.
Like, these games are setting bars of going, oh no, we're basically bringing you a brand new game with the core story or mechanics that you remember. And that when you put this up against that, maybe it doesn't hold up in the same way. And if they have any intention of bringing Prince of Persia back, because it's been, I think, over a decade since the last Prince of Persia game, then this is their one shot to get people reinvigorated about the series. And you kind of don't want to blow that with something that the main conversation that people are talking about is, oh, this actually feels like not a step up. You want people to be having the Final Fantasy VII, the Demon's Souls conversation where they're like, I cannot believe that this exists.
Yeah, and I think you've got a better shot with something like that of getting a new crowd in. Like with a remake, and we're looking at the moment at Prince of Persia Classic on PS3. So this is like the recent memory of this series, ignoring 2008. And then this is kind of the look of the this here is the Sands of Time remake. And yeah, it looks obviously heaps better than the classic, but it doesn't look like a modern game. And when you look at Final Fantasy VII remake, obviously it's a much more successful title. Prince of Persia was big, but not Final Fantasy big. Final Fantasy VII, they invested a lot of money in remaking this thing that would obviously talk to the people that know the narrative, but could deliver them an entirely new game experience.
Totally.
And this looks like 1.5 kind of game experience and not a big enough leap visually to interest people broader than the core that wanted. You know, that's where that original remake thing was of like remaking Conker's Bad Fur Day on the Xbox. It's like you just have now uglier models because it's not like pretty 64 graphics, and but it runs on the Xbox. Whoop-de-doo. So this is kind of like that, where it's like, oh, we made it run on the new system, and so it got some upgrades along the way. But it's like it's not a new experience. It's just like a little step up.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see. So they haven't set a new release date now. This is the second time that it's been pushed back. It was supposed to come out on January 21st when it was revealed last September. That it then got delayed to March 18th with Ubisoft attributing COVID-19 as being the reason. And now they're saying that in the statement that they put out, I think the wording of the statement is pretty intentional here. Hello, Prince of Persia fans. Since announcing Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time remake in September, we saw an outpouring of feedback from you on this beloved franchise. Normally, when you see these kinds of statements, you say, we saw an outpouring of support and excitement, and we want to make sure that we deliver on that. And this is literally an outpouring of feedback. And that's not necessarily a good thing.
No, and I think it's even tripped up on the hello, because it's hello Prince of Persia fans. It's already you're like kowtowing to literally just the fans.
Totally, yeah. It's not even fans, old and upcoming. Like it's literally like, hi, PP fan 17 on Reddit. We read your post, and oh my god, did it wreck our Christmas party? They said, with that being said, we've made the decision to shift the release to a later date. This extra development time will enable our teams to deliver a remake that feels fresh while remaining faithful to the original. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what this game looks like when they re-reveal it. Having not set a release date, potentially they might be going quite far back to the drawing board and going, okay, we're actually going to give this a proper overhaul, which I think, if you're trying to please the people that you angered with the reveal in the first place, that's kind of what you have to do. But yeah, we'll see. Maybe this is just a couple of months, or maybe this is, hey, actually, we're going to be coming out in 2023 now because we're going to sink the money into this to do it, quote unquote, properly. But we'll see how it goes. The only thing about this as well is that it is a small Ubisoft team. It is a Ubisoft team, but it's the newest Ubisoft team. So I wonder if the reaction from the globe will get some more global Ubisoft employees kind of injected into the pipeline to go like, all right, you guys have done a great job up to this point. Let's show you how to mold it into the thing that people expect of it. Yeah, French.
Particularly of Ubisoft. The French.
Yeah. There's just planes landing from Paris and just, you may not have enough money to be able to update that game the way that you want. If you really want to treat it properly, hand it over to Activision, not because they necessarily treat games properly, but because they have enough money to do it if they wanted to. On Friday, Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick told Yahoo News, quote, we had the best year in our 30-year history. Their revenue was $3.05 billion versus the $2.78 billion that they expected. In the final quarter of the year, the Call of Duty franchise saw monthly active users of 128 million, while sustaining more than 100 million active users throughout the year. In-game purchases on both consoles and PCs grew by 40%. They have north of 300 million users playing across their various franchises each month. That number surpasses the number of subscribers for both Netflix and Disney Plus. And then there is Candy Crush, the game that we always forget about, that in the double-digit growth year over year in the last quarter of the year, with monthly active users totaling a whopping 240 million players, as reported by Daniel Howley at Yahoo Finance. But the reason that we're talking about this is because on that call, on this finance call to investors, the company also went on to stress that Blizzard would have a substantial 2022 and strongly indicated that that's when Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4 will drop. Pete, I don't know about you, but I was expecting Overwatch 2 later this year because we have not heard much from that game in a very long time, but it looks like that's not the case.
Yeah, I think... Look, there's a part of me hopes that Overwatch 2 doesn't become a thing, like that it gets cancelled before release.
Totally,
because it's the same, in my opinion, mistake that Activision made with Destiny in putting a 2 at the end of this title that should live and breathe on its own forever. Update the thing that exists, keep the audience where it is, and give them a better experience. Mm-hmm. Overwatch 2, from the moment I heard about it, I was like, why? Why? What is stopping you from putting all of those new features into the Overwatch that currently exists and rolling them out? I mean, I get that from a marketing perspective, it gives them a reboot. They get a fresh start on the people that have dropped off of Overwatch, going like, oh, there's something new happening. But to me, it's like, I feel like, and I don't work at the studio, but I feel like internally at the studio as well, they'd be like, why as developers are we splitting our time and focus onto this thing that should be iterative improvements to this title that already exists, that we love and have been working on for years? What is the add?
There were Blizzard employees that sort of spoke off the record after this announcement, going that they were surprised when they were told that this is the direction that Overwatch was heading in. Because, yeah, like I feel like there's no... Unless like, a sequel to me implies that you want to tell a new story. Like, sequels are for narrative games nowadays. I feel like that you go, if you have a multiplayer game, there's no reason for you to do it other than the one reason, which is you can sell another copy of the video game. And when you have, when you have 300 million people playing your games, when you have an enormous amount of revenue coming in from in-game, like Activision saw 40% growth in in-game purchases. Just put a battle pass and some more skins in the Overwatch store, and you will be fine. You don't need all the money. You can settle with most of the money. But Blizzard are going to see no money this year from Overwatch 2 or Diablo 4, which means that 2021 for Blizzard is looking pretty quiet.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll have plenty to play, and that time will pass as quickly as years seem to pass as we get older.
And we march towards our inevitable sunsetting.
But it's a shame. It's a shame. I'm super keen to play another Diablo in particular, and hopefully one that they learn their lessons from the Diablo 3 launch and come out with a strong Diablo title at launch, rather than 18 months after launch it becoming the Diablo game that people wanted. So yeah, like I love the dungeon crawl, and Diablo is the pinnacle of that to me. I know there are great competitors to that, like even at Pillars of Eternity, it still goes from strength to strength. There's content for that all the time. But there's something about the Blizzard polish that just really gets me going. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah, and I saw in the chat, Luxton64 said, I thought Overwatch 2 was going to be mainly PvE. If it's going to have such a different focus, maybe the sequel makes sense. And I hear that, and they definitely did say that there's going to be a single player involved there. I would have thought that what you do in that scenario is go, instead of, hey, here's $70, you get the campaign and the new multiplayer and a new box, and we have to move our entire player base onto a new title, then release a campaign as an add-on for $40 to the existing title, update the multiplayer for free for everybody, so that you kind of split your difference there. The people who want to play the single player get the single player, but then everyone who's currently playing Overwatch doesn't need to go, but gets a significant upgrade to what they're already playing. So, obviously there are 4,000 things that we don't know about that are influencing this decision, but I'm fairly certain that 3,999 of them are dollars. So the almighty dollar wins out again on this one. And then closing out
can I just say thanks to Lapscallion called me out in the chat, Path of Exile, not Pillars. Correct.
Yes. Yep.
Path of Exile.
And Path of Exile doing incredible things with their free updates constantly. That game changes over and over and over again. But even though we may not be seeing anything particularly new from Blizzard in 2021, we might be seeing something new from Konami, everyone's favorite developer, because Silent Hill and Contra composer Akira Yamaoka said in a recent interview with AL Hub, a YouTube channel, that he expects to announce a new project this summer, and teases that he thinks it's the one that fans are, quote, hoping to hear about. And there must be some truth to this, because the interview was pulled from the channel with an apology from AlHub saying that we have been asked to remove the interview and it's gone now. So it looks like the tease was a little too teasy for Konami, and we may be seeing a new Silent Hill game closer than we expected, which was potentially never, Pete.
It was potentially never. And I don't know if it's just like the fact that I've been playing so many of them lately, but I feel like, and the fact that you've been talking about them a lot lately, but I feel like we're in the renaissance of the horror genre.
Totally.
7 was like, Resident Evil 7 was a great reboot of the series, where 5 and 6 maybe floundered a little bit. 7, the new engine, the new style of gameplay was really exciting. 8 is shaping up to be something really cool. Obviously, all of the indie development scene of horror games has been thriving for the past decade, but it seems to have like just taken over. And I feel like maybe streaming helps with that as well. Like horror games are fun to stream, so these little things that wouldn't get a lot of attention get more attention, and now the bigger developers are like, oh yeah, there's an audience for horror. I just finished playing The Medium, which is more of a thriller psychological thing, but give me some Silent Hill.
Give me some Silent Hill. Necrotech says I've been playing Resident Evil 7 at the moment, and so far I've shit myself twice. So there you go. So there's a little more information than you needed to know about Necrotech. But I agree. It's kind of, I do feel like it snuck up on me. And for those of you listening or watching who don't know, the reason that I've been talking about horror games a bunch is that one of my New Year's gaming resolutions was to get into horror games, because the story behind horror games have always fascinated me. I feel like they have the potential to tell way crazier stories than we see in most AAA games, or most narrative-based games. But I tend to be like Necrotech and constantly poo. I'm trying to get over that. And so this is great news for me that there could be a new silent horror that everyone's getting on board. I can get on board with as well. Obviously, Konami, presumably the ones that pulled this, there's two reasons that they could do it. There's one, which is it's true, and that they were like, we are not ready for you to talk about this, or we are ready to talk about it. We just didn't want you to be the one to talk about it.
Yeah.
But the other reason could be that they're actually just making a different game, and that Akira actually adores some other title that like he loves pachinko machines and he just didn't read the room. And that Konami were like, we don't want this causing any speculation. But I feel like, therefore, by pulling it, that's what made this news.
I made a great new sound effect suite for a pachinko machine.
Totally, yeah.
Woo!
This is the one you're all hoping to hear about. So we'll have to see how that goes. But obviously PT was shelved and never really saw the light of day. There've been rumors of a Silent Hill game in development, tons since then. In 2020, a leaker divulged that 2 Silent Hill games could be in development, one described as a soft reboot and the other one an episodic game. And then the original Team Silent art director, Mishiro Ito, also tweeted in 2020 that they were working on a new title as a core member, and added that, quote, I hope the title won't be cancelled. Which is which I feel like most developers don't announce things that go, God, I hope it's not cancelled.
Yeah. He's been watching Back Pocket too much and seeing Gus's insights into things being cancelled before release, even when they're done. So nothing's safe. Nothing is ever safe.
Though honestly, it feels like he's just been working with Konami too much. So we'll see if that eventuates, and if it does, then we will be sure to be jumping on it. All right, Peter, I think we have covered everything we need to cover on today's episode of the Someone Daily Backup. Should we back it out?
Let's back it out.
See you later.
Bye.